Hey everyone, welcome back to an exciting new session from Edureka. My name is Vajiha, and in this Angular project session, you'll be learning how to create Angular applications using all the building blocks of Angular, Bootstrap, and jQuery. So in this session, I will consider 3 scenarios wherein the first case will be aimed at making you guys understand the building blocks of an Angular application and how you can use them. In the second case, we shall see how to add Bootstrap and jQuery to our applications, and finally, we'll build a complete application from scratch. Now, before we start off with this session, make sure you guys have Node.js and Visual Studio Code installed. In case you're not aware of how to install them, check out the Angular tutorial video by Edureka, where you'll get a step-by-step guidance to install them, and all the other fundamentals of Angular 8 also will be covered. Okay, so heading towards the first section, over here, we'll create a project, add components, services, and also see how to perform routing. So now I'll jump onto my command prompt. And over here, the first thing that I'm going to do is install the Angular CLI. To install Angular CLI, you can make use of npm. So the command will be npm install -g, which stands for global, @Angular CLI. So to create a project, you can make use of the ng-new command. So I'll just type in ng, new, and the name of the project. You can give any name of your choice. In my case, I'll just name it as basic. This is going to take a while. So when you're doing this, Angular will ask you 2 questions. The first question is if you would like to add Angular routing. Just type Y and hit enter. The second question is what type of style sheet you would like to use. In my case, I'll be using CSS. Therefore, I'll just select CSS and hit enter. Okay, so now our project is created. The project that is created will consist of many files and folders. In case you select no for routing, you will see that the app routing module.ts file will not be present in your workplace. Now to show you guys all this, what I'm going to do is just get inside my project. So I'll just type in cd basic. And then I'll just type in code space dot. This will open up my project in Visual Studio Code. So as you can see over here, a project has been created with a number of files. The ng-new command creates an initial skeleton of the Angular application by default at the root level of the workplace. Along with that, it also creates end-to-end tests. Those tests are present within this E2E folder. Now when I try to run this project, you will see a default welcome page of Angular. So just to show that to you guys, what I'm going to do is jump onto my command prompt over here. And to run my server, I'll have to make use of the ng serve command. Now what I'm going to do is add an open extension to this. And this extension will open the development server on port number 4200. So I'll just type in -o, or you can also type in --open. The ng serve command is used to serve the application through the development server on the local host. This is nothing but the welcome page of our application. As you can see over here, it says the basic app is running. Now to create your own Angular application, all you have to do is modify this. Okay, so now let's get back to Visual Studio. So now coming back towards the files and folders that are present over here. In this video, I will just explain the files that we shall be using. In case you want to know what each of these files does and why is it present over here, you can refer to the Angular tutorial video from Edureka. So now I'll move on towards the main.ts file. So this is nothing but the main.ts file. This file contains the code that is required to bootstrap or start off the Angular application. The next file that I want you to see is the index.html file. The index.html file basically feeds the default page of a website in case no other page is specified. The Angular CLI will automatically add the CSS and JavaScript file over here. Therefore, you will not have to add any link or script tags manually. The folder that we're going to concentrate on is the app folder. The app folder is present within the source folder. And the first file that I want you guys to see over here is the app module.ts file. The app module.ts file defines a root module named the app module. This app module tells Angular how to assemble the application initially and declares a component called as the app component. As you add on more and more components to your application, all you have to do is come over here and declare it within the declarations array. Next up is the app component.ts file. The app component.ts file defines the logic for the application's root component, which is the app component. The view or the HTML file which is associated with this component becomes the root of the view hierarchy. The app component.html file. The output that we've just seen on the default page is rendered from here. This file defines an HTML template associated with the root app component. The app component.css file is the personal app component's CSS or style sheet. So now talking about the app routing module.ts file. This file is created because you choose to have routing in your application. In case you would have selected no, this file would not have been created. So what I'm going to do over here is go to the app component.html file. I'll select everything from here except the last line, which is the route outlet. So I've cleared everything that's present over here. Now, just to show you guys that this app is working, I'll just take an h1 tag, and within this, I'll just write hello world. Now let's get back to our development server and see what happens. So as you can see over here, the default page no more exists. Rather, it's replaced by the hello world text that I have just typed in. Now let's get back to the app component.html file. And within this, I'll create a simple form. So you'll have to make use of the form tag. And within this, I'll just have name. And the input type will be text. Name will be name itself. And I'll close this. So simple form is ready. I'll save this. I'll get back to my browser. As you can see over here, the page has automatically refreshed and a simple form has been created. So in this project, I'm not going to concentrate on the HTML or the CSS part. All I want you guys to get familiar is with the building blocks of Angular and how to add them in your project. Now, before we move on towards that, let me just tell you guys how an Angular application actually works. So for that, I'll just open this angular.json file. So the execution of an Angular application starts from the angular.json file. This file is used to define all the standards and paths for your Angular project. Also, the angular.json file specifies which main.ts file and index.html file has to be executed. Once this main.ts file is detected, it is compiled as it contains all the code that is required to bootstrap or start off the Angular application. From the main.ts file, Angular moves on towards the app module. From this main.ts file, Angular will move on towards the app module. The app module is present within the app module.ts file. This file consists of all the components that Angular needs to know in order to run your application, and these components are declared under the ngModule decorator in the declarations array. From appmodule.ts file, it moves on towards the app component.ts file in order to look for the app component. This file specifies the selector and the template URLs. All the components of an Angular application are related to this root component. The index.html file contains the app root selector. So let me just open it. Okay, so as you can see, this is the app root selector for the app component. To sum it all up, you can say that the execution begins from the main.ts file, then it's passed on towards the appmodule.ts file, and then it moves on to the app component.ts file. I hope you guys are clear with this. Now let's move on and understand the building blocks of Angular. Building blocks of Angular are nothing but modules, components, templates, metadata, directives, data binding, services, and dependency injection. A module basically allows you to separate the functionality of your program into different parts. These parts are independent of each other, which means each module's output is completely separate from that of the other. If you make changes in any of these, the change will be made to only that module and it will not interfere with that of the others. In Angular, modules allow you to group together all the other building blocks such as components, directives, etc. These modules are referred to as ngModules. Applications created by Angular are driven by functional sets which collect related code. Therefore, Angular applications are defined by a set of ngModules. ngModules are very much different when compared to those of the JavaScript modules. ngModules declare a group of files that can be parsed and analyzed. You can also make use of other ng modules within one ng module by simply importing them. Above all, these modules prove to be very much helpful when you're creating large applications that have multiple functionalities. Besides allowing clean code creation, these modules also help you minimize the code size by reuse of these modules and optional import of the required ones. Optional importing is also referred to as lazy loading, meaning you can load ng modules only on your demands. Not to forget, ng modules are also one of the biggest reasons for Angular's popularity. Every application created with Angular will have at least one ng module, which is the root module. This root module in Angular is referred to as the app module. So as you can see on the screen, this is the default app module that is created by Angular CLI. The import statements are basically the JavaScript imports. The class that follows has an @ng module decorator. Decorators basically modify classes or property definitions. They are also referred to as annotations and are JavaScript features. In Angular, these decorators contain some metadata to classes and properties so as to convey what they mean and how they're supposed to function. I shall explain metadata in detail when we reach the component section. So the ng module decorator that you see over here identifies the root module or the app module. It then tells Angular how to launch and compile it by making use of the metadata. By default, the declarations array contains the app component, which is the root component of this application. Imports are used to import the browser module in order to attain the browser services such as DOM sanitization, rendering, etc. Providers are nothing but the service providers, which we shall be discussing later on, and Bootstrap is the root component created by Angular and it's inserted in the index.html host web page. So as you can see over here, app component is present both in the declarations and in Bootstrap. Now this is because this is the only component that is present in this application. Coming back towards this declarations array, the declarations array present in any module informs Angular about the components that belong to that module. When you create more and more components to your application, don't forget to add them in your declarations. Components cannot be used without declaring them in the ng module class. So make sure you declare every component in exactly one ng module class. If you fail to do so, you're sure to encounter an error. The declarations array can only contain declarables or components, directives, and pipes. All the modules declarables should be present in the declarations array, and they must belong to just one ng module. The classes declared within one module are visible only to that module. But in case you want their functionality somewhere else, all you have to do is export them to other modules. Apart from declarations, imports, providers, and Bootstrap, there's another array that can be present over here, which is the exports array. The exports array is a subset of the declarations array that are accessible in the component templates of other ng modules. So now let's move on towards the next building block, which are components. As I've already mentioned earlier, all Angular applications have at least one component, which is the root component. This root component connects the component hierarchy with the page document object module or the DOM. All components define classes that have applications data and logic, and they are also associated with HTML template. This HTML template defines a view that is to be displayed. Therefore, components are basically used to control the views of an MVC architecture. The @component decorator that you see on the screen will tell Angular that the class immediately below is a component and provides the templates and the related component-specific metadata. Angular components are the most basic user interface for your application, and they always are associated with the template and are a subset of directives. The component's logic is defined inside a class. This basically determines how it supports the view. Components are created, updated, and deleted by Angular as you proceed within your application. Your application can take action at any moment in its lifecycle through the optional lifecycle hooks. Lifecycle hooks provide visibility into key life moments and the ability to act when they occur. Therefore, lifecycle hooks allow you to control components' runtime behavior, and they are called only and only when they're defined. So now let's get back to our command prompt and see how you can add components to your projects. What I'm going to do is just return the control to the command prompt. Okay, now let me just clear the screen. So to create a new component, you can make use of the ng generate component command. So what I'm going to do is just type in ng generate, and since I want to generate a component, I'll just say component. Now you can give any name to your component. I'll just call this component as home and I'll hit enter. So as you can see over here, this has created a new component with 4 files. That is the component.ts file or the TypeScript file, the component.spec.ts file which is used to perform end-to-end testing, the component.html file that will render the required HTML or the view for that page, and the component-specific CSS file. So now let's get back to our Visual Studio. And over here, you'll be able to see the component that you've just added. So I added a home component and it's just present over here. Now, once you've added a new component, you'll have to remember to get back and add it. So as you can see over here, the home component has already been added. Now, this is because I have added an extension, which is the auto import extension. In case even you want to insert this extension, all you have to do is go to these extensions over here and just type in auto import. So as you can see over here, the version that I'm using is 1.5.3. Once you add this, you will not have to manually come here and import the components that you add to your application. So now get back to app-component.html file and specify the component selector over here. In my case, the name of the component is home. So I'll just say app-home. And I'll save this. Now let's get back to our development server. I'll have to run the ngserve command again. So as you can see over here, our application says that home works. Home is the name of my component, and this is the default output. So as you can see over here, within the view of this component, I have a simple line saying home works. And this is what we just saw on the development server. What I'm going to do now is get back to the home component.ts file. And over here, I'll make a slight modification. So before I make any changes to this file, what I'm going to do is add in a new file within this folder. And I'll just call it as home.ts. Do not forget the .ts extension because I'll be typing in TypeScript code within this. Over here, I'll create an export class. And the name of the class will be name. Within this, I'll keep a single property called name. And this will be of the type string. Let me save this. I'll get back to the home components.ts file. And within the home component class, I'll create a new property called as name, which will be of the type of the name class. In case you have issues understanding the syntax of TypeScript, I'd suggest you guys to go and check out the Angular tutorial video of Edureka. So for the name, I'll just specify as Edureka. Now the reason why you're seeing a red mark over here is because I've not imported the class that I've just created. So all I have to do is import it. So import. The name of the class was name itself. From. So now we've imported the class. Let me just save this. I'll move on to the home component.html file. I'll just delete this. So one thing that I want to do over here is change the name of this variable, since I already have this variable present in the name class. So I'll just call this as my name and I'll save it. So now I'll go to the home component.html file, and over here I'll just specify an h3 tag, and within this I'll be making use of the interpolation binding feature. So over here I'll just specify my name dot name. I'll also make use of a pipe over here. And to this, I'll just say uppercase. And I'll save this. So now let's get back to our browser and see how this works. As you can see over here, the changes I've made has been reflected on this browser. Also, please make a note that the pipe is working. With Angular pipes, display value transformations can be declared in your template HTML. A class with the @pipe decorator defines a function that transforms input values to output values for display in a view. There are various types of views. In my case, I've used uppercase. Other than that, you can also make use of lowercase, date, currency, etc. Not just that, you can also define new pipes. So now you've seen what are components and how you can add them to your projects. The next thing that I want you to know is services. Service is a broad category that encircles values, functions, or features that are required by an application. Service classes have a narrow and well-defined purpose. Components are differentiated from services in Angular so as to increase the modularity and reusability of your code. Separating the components' view-related functionality and other kinds of processing will make your component classes lean and efficient. To create a service using the Angular CLI, all you have to do is make use of the ng-generate-service command. So now let's get back to our command prompt. And then I'll just type in ng, g for generate, and service. I'll just call it as home service. And I'll hit enter. So as you can see over here, two files, that is the home service.service.ts file and the test file for this have been created. So as you can see on the screen, this is the default service.ts file that is created by Angular. Now in case you want to inject this into some component, all you have to do is go to that component and over here, type in import, followed by the class name. The class name is home service. It's auto-imported. I'll delete this. The moment I type the name of the class, it gets auto-imported. So this is how you inject a service into a component. Now in case you want to make use of this, you can go ahead and specify a property that will make use of this service. What I'm going to do is create a private property over here. I'll just call it as home service. So as you can see over here, this property is going to make use of this class. I'm not going to get into the details of this. I just want you guys to understand how to embed and inject services. Next up, we'll be looking at routing. Routing helps you to display your application information in multiple pages. This can be done using Angular Router, which enables you to show different components and data depending on which part of the application the user is referring to. Angular's router will allow the user to navigate from one component to the other as the user selects the various components. It can be done either by entering the URL directly in the address bar or by clicking on the links given in the application. Our application is already set up to use the Angular router. So to specify the route, that is where the user has to be directed, you can make use of the routes array which is present in the app routing module.ts file. Now in case I want to specify a different path to my component, that is the home component, all I have to do is just open curly braces. Within this, I'll specify the path property. It should be home because the name of my component is home itself. And for the component property, I'll have to specify the home component class. Now the reason why I've just specified one path over here is because I just have one component. You can add as many routes as the number of pages you would like to include in your project. So with this, I hope you guys have understood the basic building blocks of an Angular application. Now I'll jump on towards the second case over here, that is adding Bootstrap and jQuery to your project. To create beautiful websites, it's very much required for you to integrate Bootstrap and JavaScript files into them. Now in case you want to add Bootstrap, you can do it in two ways. The first is to directly make use of the Bootstrap CDN or the Content Delivery Network to enable Bootstrap to deliver the cached version of Bootstrap's compiled CSS and JavaScript to your project. To do that, you can go to the Bootstrap CDN link. So just go to getbootstrap.com and then click on Getting Started. As you can see, you will have the Bootstrap CDN provided over here. Now what I want you guys to do is include this bootstrap.min.css file. To include that, all you have to do is copy this link from here. Then open the index.html file and paste it at the end of the head section. So move on towards the index.html file. And towards the end of this head section, I'll just paste it. Save it, and I'll get back to the browser. Next, you will need to add the bootstrap.min.js file. This is mandatory if you want to include Bootstrap JavaScript functionality. Just copy the script tag from here and paste it within the body part of this index.html file. Now the next thing that you'll have to do is include jQuery library. This is because JavaScript functionality is dependent on jQuery. To include jQuery functionality, you can go to the official jQuery website. So I'll just move on to jQuery website. jQuery 3.x is the latest version, and over here I want the minified version, so I'll just click on minified. So as you can see, I have the corresponding script tag that is present. I'll just copy this. I'll get back to my index.html file, and I'll paste it just above the script tag of the bootstrap min.js file. So once that is done, I'll rerun my server. So I'll just run ngserve command again. So as you can see, the font has changed, which means Bootstrap has been embedded into my project. The second method is to install Bootstrap and jQuery. Now to install it, all you can do is get back to the command prompt. And over here, just type in the command npm install bootstrap jQuery --save. --save will save Bootstrap and jQuery to the package.json file. So as you can see, both the packages have been installed. Now let's get back to Visual Studio. So now let me just open the package.json file. So as you can see over here, both Bootstrap and jQuery have been installed. Now since we want to load this CSS and JavaScript globally, we should specify the path of this within the angular.json file. So what I'm going to do is just open up the angular.json file and move on to styles and scripts. Now what I want to tell you guys is that any package that you install will be present within this node modules folder. So over here, let's just look for Bootstrap. Here it is. And within this, I'll open the dist folder, CSS. And from here, I want to access the bootstrap min.css file. So what I'm going to do is specify the path of this file within the styles array over here. So I'll just specify the path, node modules. Within the bootstrap folder is the dist folder, which contains the CSS folder. And then is the bootstrap.min.css file. Just be careful while specifying these paths. Once this is done, we move on towards the scripts array. And over here, I'll have to specify the path of the jQuery min.js file. So to do that, all I have to do is look for the jQuery module. So here it is. Within this, the dist folder. And within the dist folder is the jQuery.min.js file. Okay, so all I have to do is include the path of this file within scripts. I'll just copy the previous one. This is jQuery. There is no CSS folder. And the name of the file is jQuery.min.js. I also have to include the bootstrap.min.js file over here. So I'll just specify a comma. I'll copy this line and I'll paste it. And instead of jQuery, it will be bootstrap. And instead of CSS this time, it's going to be the JavaScript folder or the JS folder. Now what I'm going to do is just save this. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is get back to the index.html file. And from here, I'll delete the Bootstrap CDN links and the jQuery CDN links. I'll save this and I'll get back to my development server. So as you can see, Bootstrap is still working and I have no errors. In case you guys want to be more clear, I'll just give you an example. And from here, I'll pick up a nav. I'll just copy this code. I'll get back to my project. So now I'll open the app component.html file. Just remove this. and I'll paste the code that I just took from Bootstrap. Let me save this and get back to my project. So as you can see over here, the nav bar that I just took from the Bootstrap official website is working. This means Bootstrap has successfully been installed. So now moving on towards the final section of this video, which is creating a complete Angular application using all the building blocks, Bootstrap and jQuery. So now let's get back to our project, and I'll just delete all this present from here. I'll open the service file that I've created, and over here, I'll just insert some dummy data for my project. So before I move on further, let me just show you guys the website that I've created. This is a sample Edureka Angular website, and over here, my home component or the home page consists of some of the top ranking Angular blogs and also a link to all the front-end development blogs from Edureka. I also have a header component that contains the home, student list, and the enroll components. Now when I click on any of these components, I'll be redirected to a different page. This page contains a list of all the students who have enrolled for this course. When I click on Show Details, my page is going to display the details of that student. Also, I have a separate enroll component which will allow the user to enroll himself for this course. So let me just show you what happens when I enroll into this. So I'll just type in some ID. I'll say 102. And for the name, I'll just say student. Student @xyz.com. Anything. And within the description, I'll just specify student details. Okay, now I'll click on this enroll button that is present over here, and I'll get back to the student list component. So as you can see, the student who has just enrolled is present within the student list. Now when I click on show details, I'll have the corresponding details of that student. So now let's get back to our Visual Studio and build this website. So I'll get back to Visual Studio. And over here, I'll open the service.ts file. I want this service to have some dummy data that I'll be able to show on my development server. So within this home service class, what I'm going to do is create an array of students. Since I already have some dummy data present, what I'm going to do is just copy that over here, and I'll save this. Now this service component will be used for all the other components present in my project. So what I'm going to do over here is create two functions. One, which will display all the students that are present in my list. And the second, that is going to help students enroll for the course. Let me just specify a public access specifier. In case you're not aware of any of these, you can still refer to the Angular tutorial video by Edureka. So public, the name of the method will be get, and I'll just call it students. Now this function is going to be of the array type, and this array is going to hold the IDs, names, description, and email. So that'll be ID. Sorry, I forgot to specify the curly braces. ID, name, description, and email. So within the body of this function, I'll just specify one return function, that is return this.students. This function will help me retrieve all the students that are present in my dummy data. Next up, I'll create another function, and the name of this function will be create student. Now, since I want the student to have ID, name, description, and an email ID, what I'm going to do is just specify students and the type of this, which is nothing but ID, name, description, and email. Within the body of this function, I'll just specify this dot students dot push. So now both my functions are ready. The next thing that I'm going to do is add on some more components to this project. So I'll get back to my command prompt, and over here I'll type in ng generate component, and the first component will be student list. The next component will be student create. And I will also have a header component. So I'll get back to the Visual Studio Code. Now, when I open the app module.ts file, you'll be able to see that all the components that I created have been imported by default over here. Now, this is because of the auto import extension that we spoke about earlier. In case you have not added this extension, you'll have to manually import the corresponding components. Now, I want each of my component to have a specific destination or a separate page. Therefore, what I'm going to do is go to the app routing module.ts file. And over here, I'll create a path for all the pages that I want to display in my project. I'm not going to be typing this manually. I already have the code present for it. So let me just copy paste it over here. So now my app routing module.ts file is ready. So the path match property that you see over here can have two values, that is the prefix or full. When the user specifies some URL within the address bar, this property will check if the user has correctly specified the whole extension or will just check for the prefix of it. By default, the value of this property is prefix. The reason why I've specified full over here is because I want the user to correctly specify the URL link. In case he does not do so, I'll redirect to the home page. So now what I'm going to do is go to the header component. And within this header component, I want to mention the home component, the student list component, and the enroll component. Within the HTML part of this header component, what I'm going to do is paste some navbar code from Bootstrap. So I'll go to the official Bootstrap website. I want my header to be right aligned, so I'll just pick up some right aligned navbar. You can take any of your choice. I'm just taking something that I prefer to. I'll paste it over here. What I'm going to do is modify the content. I have my project specific content present in my previous project, so I'll just copy that from there. HTML part of the header component is ready. Now, in case the user clicks on home, he'll be redirected to the home page. If he clicks on student list, he will move on towards the student list component. And if he clicks on enroll, he'll move on towards the student create component. I'll just save this. Next, I'll have to move towards the app component.html file. Over here, I'll have to include the header. I'll delete this. And I'll include app header. Let me just save this. I'll delete hello world. Now, when I run my server, my header component is present over here. Okay, I see this Edureka from here. I'll just delete it. So that's present in the home component. So I'll go to the home component.html file. I'll delete this and I'll save it. So now, as you can see, the browser has refreshed and my header component has been displayed. Now within the home page, I'll create a Bootstrap Jumbotron or an area that is very important. So what I'm going to do is just copy the code that's present in my project. The next thing that I'm doing over here is modify the home component.html file. Since I have the code ready, I've just pasted it over here. So let me just explain to you guys what I've done over here. The first thing that I've done is included an image. Because of the first image tag, you're able to see this image present over here. The code that I've used for this is the responsive image code present in Bootstrap. The next thing that I've done is within a div tag, I have a class of Jumbotron. Jumbotrons basically mark areas that are very important. So as you can see over here, the gray area is nothing but the Jumbotron. Not just that, I also have some cards over here that are aligned next to each other. And within this, I've just specified a few blocks that are very important. Finally, I have this last Jumbotron, which contains a link to all the front-end web development blogs of Edureka. My homepage is ready. So my homepage is ready. Now I'll move on towards the next component, that is the student list component. Over here, I'll open the student list component.ts file. Within the student list component class, I'll create two variables, that is student and selected student. Then I'll be making use of the same service class that I've created, which is home service. So I'll just create a public parameter. I can give any name to the variable, but I'll just specify as home service. Next, I'll create a public function and I'll just name it as select student. This is going to take student parameter This is going to take student as a parameter. And within this, I'll just return this dot selected student. And I'll insert it into the student property. Now I'll have to update the view of this component. So I'll open the student list component.html page, and I'll just copy paste the code that I've already written. So now I'll just come and refresh my browser. Looks like the header is missing. There it is. The header has moved towards the end of this page. That is because I've not specified the CSS for it. So I'll just get back to my project, and I'll go towards header component.css file. And one more thing that I have to do is move on towards the app component.html file. And instead of placing the header after the route outlet, I'll have to place it before that. So now let's get back to our development server. So as you can see, the header component is present where I want it to be. Now I'll just click on the student list. So as you can see over here, all the students have been retrieved. Now, in case I click on any of this, it will show me the details of that corresponding student. Now, two of our components are ready. The next thing that I'll have to do is manipulate this enroll component. I'll get back to Visual Studio Code. And over here, I'll open the student create component. So within this, I'll create an array called as student. And this is going to hold the IDs, name, description, and the email of the students. And one more thing that I'll have to do is import the service class. So I'll just say import. The name of the service class was home service. What I'm also going to do is create a student class that will allow me to display the created student in the student list. The student create component.ts class is ready. Next, I'll have to modify the views of this component. So I already have the code ready for this, so I'll just paste it over here. I've copy pasted the required code. I'll get back to my browser and I'll rerun my project. So let me just see if everything is working. I'll go to the home page. And over here, my homepage runs fine. I'll click on student list. So the student list component also works fine. And the student create component. So over here, let me just type in some details. I'll just give some random name. So now let's get back to student list. So here it is. The student that just got enrolled is also shown up in the student list. So this brings us to the end of this session. I hope you guys have enjoyed and learned something new. Goodbye and take care.